The hangar pulsed with mechanical rhythm, wrenches striking steel, hydraulic arms humming, the sharp scent of lubricant and hot metal hanging in the air. Amid the noise and motion, he worked in silence. Just another mechanic. Or so everyone thought. Staff Sergeant Elias Ward crouched beneath the belly of an A-10 Thunderbolt, tightening a calibration bolt on the GAU-8 Avenger, the aircraft's monstrous rotary cannon. His sleeves were rolled up, grease streaking his forearms. He moved with quiet precision, his focus absolute. To most, he was background noise, a name on the maintenance roster, but not for long. Colonel Marcus Harlow strode through the hangar, clipboard in hand, reviewing inspection logs before the morning test flight. He barely glanced toward the maintenance bay until a small detail caught his attention. A flick of movement, the roll of fabric. Elias's sleeve had slipped higher on his arm, revealing a tattoo inked in black and silver, geometric lines forming an insignia most hadn't seen in years. Harlow stopped, his breath caught. That mark didn't belong to any active unit, not anymore. He stepped closer. "Where did you get that insignia, Sergeant?" Elias didn't look up. "Earned it, sir." The colonel's pulse quickened. That emblem belonged to a strike detachment officially erased from records 5 years ago. A ghost unit that was never supposed to exist. Before Harlow could press further, an airman called for him from across the hangar. When he looked back, Elias was gone. Tools neatly stacked, bay lights off. The next morning, his workstation was empty. No personal items, no notes, no trace. Just the faint scent of metal polish and engine oil lingering like a shadow. But when Colonel Harlow reviewed his personnel files, he found something that didn't make sense. Missing deployment data, falsified training records, and service dates that didn't align. The deeper he searched, the colder his blood ran. Whoever Elias Ward really was, he wasn't just a mechanic. That night, Harlow drove through the quiet base, headlights slicing through the desert dark. The A-10 sat under floodlights like a sleeping predator. Its cannon gleamed. The same weapon Ward had been working on. Something about it didn't sit right. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. At 0500 hours, Colonel Harlow arrived at the flight line for a pre-dawn test. The tarmac shimmered under halogen beams, the Nevada sky still dark above him. The A-10 stood ready, nose angled toward the horizon, its massive gun dominating the frame like a coiled threat. Harlow climbed the maintenance steps, inspecting the weapon system himself. Every bolt was perfectly torqued, every connection spotless. But something in the alignment felt off. The cannon's feed track, though mechanically sound, showed micro-adjustments. Not the kind of change a standard technician would make. The kind of change someone would make to redirect a system failure. "Sir?" came a voice behind him. General Rowan stood there, crisp uniform immaculate despite the hour. A faint smile ghosting his lips. "Everything operational?" Harlow nodded, concealing his unease. "As far as I can tell." "Excellent," Rowan said. "I'll be observing this morning's run. It's not every day we test America's flying cannon." As the general departed, Harlow's gaze lingered on the cockpit. Inside, taped neatly to the instrument panel, was a small scrap of paper, almost invisible under low light. Neat handwriting. Mechanical pencil. Check cannon feed synchronization. E. His chest tightened. Elias Ward. Who leaves a note like that for a commanding officer? And why? The engines ignited, splitting the morning calm with a deep guttural roar. Somewhere between the hum of turbines and the shriek of hydraulics, Colonel Harlow realized he wasn't preparing for a test flight. He was walking straight into someone else's plan. But what he didn't know was that the plan had already started hours earlier, and the only man who could stop it had vanished without a trace. The desert morning began in silence. Wind whispered across the tarmac, lifting fine dust around the parked aircraft. The A-10 Thunderbolt waited, still and ominous, its steel skin glinting faintly beneath the sodium lights. Colonel Marcus Harlow approached with a thermos of black coffee in one hand, his steps echoing against the concrete. He'd slept maybe 2 hours. His mind kept replaying that symbol on Elias Ward's arm, the black and silver insignia of a unit the Pentagon had sworn never existed. The test schedule said 0530. By 0515, Harlow was already in the cockpit. He went through the pre-flight checklist like a ritual. Hydraulics, avionics, pressure gauges, every switch flipped with precision. But beneath the order, a quiet unease pulsed. The maintenance logs were flawless. Too flawless. Through the glass canopy, he saw General Rowan standing near the hangar entrance, hands clasped behind his back, posture rigid. Around him, security personnel observed with unnatural focus. It didn't feel like a test flight. It felt like surveillance. Harlow ran his gloved hand along the throttle, pausing at a small strip of duct tape near the control mount. Barely noticeable. Under it, the faintest indentation of handwriting pressed into the metal. Delay the burst. 2 seconds. He exhaled slowly. Ward's warning. Before he could think about what that meant, the tower cleared him for takeoff. The twin engines screamed to life. The A-10 rolled forward, heavy yet purposeful, every vibration traveling through his bones. As he accelerated down the runway, the desert horizon glowed faintly gold, dawn rising behind the mountains. He lifted off, climbing into open sky. From the observation platform, Rowan watched through binoculars, expression unreadable. His aide took notes. Cameras tracked every second of telemetry. Whatever this test was really about, it wasn't just about the cannon. At 10,000 feet, Harlow leveled out. The aircraft's hum was steady. He initiated the firing sequence, short burst, 3-second intervals, and the A-10 thundered to life. The vibration rattled his chest like rolling thunder. Rounds struck their target with textbook precision. First run, perfect. Second run, normal feed. Third run, the one marked high load sustained fire. That's when he hesitated. He remembered the note. Instead of continuous fire, he introduced a 2-second pause between bursts. The difference was subtle, almost imperceptible on the telemetry, but enough to break the mechanical rhythm. The cannon roared, then coughed, then roared again. Warning lights flickered for half a second before stabilizing. Without the delay, the weapon would have locked and jammed mid-burst, potentially detonating internal pressure. A guaranteed mid-air failure. His pulse quickened. Someone had rigged this system to fail. He completed the test sequence flawlessly, masking the realization under calm radio chatter. Run complete. Returning to base. On the ground, technicians applauded the perfect data feed. Rowan smiled thinly. Excellent work, Colonel. The modifications held perfectly. Harlow climbed down from the cockpit, sweat streaking his temple. Almost perfectly, he said. Minor feed hesitation near the end. Rowan's smile didn't waver. I'm sure it was nothing critical. Maybe, Harlow replied, handing his helmet to the crew chief, but I'll need the maintenance logs for this aircraft. Every access record since last night. Rowan's tone cooled. You suspect something? Just being thorough. As always. The general's gaze lingered, heavy with quiet threat. Then he turned toward his convoy, black SUVs glinting in the early sun. Harlow watched him leave. When the engines of those vehicles faded into distance, he returned to the A-10, running his fingers beneath the cannon housing. There, a micro-adjusted calibration screw tampered just enough to appear routine. Only a specialist would notice. Only someone like Ward. Whoever sabotaged the system wanted him dead and wanted Ward blamed for it. He walked the line of aircraft until the hangar swallowed him whole, the mechanical roar fading behind. At his desk, he began cross-checking access codes against personnel activity logs. One name appeared at 0437 hours, Airman First Class Broderick Lane, unauthorized access. No scheduled maintenance. Harlow leaned back, staring at the screen. The pattern was becoming clear. Ward hadn't disappeared to run. He'd gone underground to avoid being framed, and if Rowan was involved, this wasn't just a rogue technician's game. He reached for his secure phone. Operations Command, this is Colonel Harlow. I want full surveillance footage from Hangar 3 between 0300 and 0500 hours, quietly. A pause on the other end. Sir, that feed's already been requisitioned by General Rowan's office. Of course it had. Harlow ended the call, eyes narrowing. The hunt had already started, and he was standing right in the middle of it. But before the day ended, he'd realized just how far the sabotage reached, and that the missing mechanic wasn't the only ghost haunting this base. Colonel Marcus Harlow spent the afternoon in his office, blinds drawn, the desert sun slicing thin lines of gold across the floor. He hadn't left the operations wing since the flight. The data looked perfect. Too perfect. And perfection in maintenance logs always meant one thing: a cover-up. The base outside buzzed with routine. Engines warming, mechanics shouting coordinates, the smell of jet fuel thickened the air. Yet beneath that rhythm, Harlow sensed tension, a silence between the noises, the kind that follows when people are being watched. He'd spent years in military intelligence before taking command here. He recognized patterns, and this one was unmistakable. At 1600 hours, a knock sounded. "Sir, Airman First Class Broderick Lane reporting." The young man stepped in, uniform crisp, posture too straight. Fear made people rigid. "Have a seat, Airman," Harlow said evenly. "You accessed the A-10 maintenance bay at 0437 this morning, unscheduled. Explain." Lane swallowed hard. "Just routine checks, sir. Big flight scheduled, wanted to be thorough." "At 0430 without authorization? That's not thorough, Airman. That's suspicious." Lane's eyes darted toward the door. "I didn't change anything, just visual inspection." Harlow leaned forward. Someone tampered with the cannon feed synchronization. Professional work? Would have looked like a mechanical failure mid-dive. "You were the last person near that aircraft. Convince me it wasn't you." The silence stretched. Sweat traced a line down Lane's temple. "They said Sergeant Ward was dangerous," he blurted suddenly. "That he'd messed with the system. I was just supposed to fix his mistake." "Who said?" The airman hesitated, throat working. "A man from D.C. said he was with military intelligence. Didn't give a name. He told me to adjust the timing sequence. Said it was a security check." Harlow's voice dropped to a low, measured tone. "How much did they pay you?" Lane's lips parted, trembling. $5,000. "I swear I didn't think anyone would get hurt. $5,000 to sabotage a weapon system." Harlow stood, the controlled anger in his movement more terrifying than a shout. "You nearly killed a superior officer. It wasn't supposed to be like that. He said it'd just trigger a test alert, make Ward look incompetent." Harlow watched him shake, then spoke quietly. "You're going to write a statement. Names, descriptions, everything you remember. If you're not in my office by 1800, security will find you." Lane nodded frantically and rushed out, boots echoing down the hall. When the door closed, Harlow sat back and exhaled. Someone high up was moving pieces on this board, and he was meant to be one of them. He locked the door and turned to his terminal. No direct searches. Too risky. He used backdoor cross-references, personnel transfers, decommissioned unit codes, maintenance certifications. Each query tightened the noose around a single name: Elias Ward. Except there was no record of an Elias Ward anywhere before 3 years ago. The file was constructed like an origami mask, folds that looked real until you tried to unfold them. A faint knock broke his concentration. Captain Levine, his adjutant, peeked in. "Sir, General Rowan requests your presence in briefing room Alpha." He said it's urgent. Of course he did. Harlow saved the encrypted search, shut down the terminal, and followed. Briefing room Alpha was the most secure facility on base. Soundproof, no external feeds. Inside, Rowan stood before a large display screen showing satellite imagery. 2 armed guards flanked the door. "Colonel," Rowan greeted coolly, "appreciate you joining us. There's a situation that concerns your command." Harlow stepped closer, eyes scanning the map. "Coordinates from the Black Sea region. 5 years ago," Rowan continued, "a special operations team was deployed to neutralize terrorists in Sevastopol. The mission failed. All personnel killed." The screen flickered to thermal footage. A compound engulfed in flame. Bodies reduced to heat signatures and ash. "This is where Raven Team died." Harlow felt the room tighten. "I see. And how does that relate to a maintenance sergeant on my base?" Rowan's eyes narrowed. "Because your sergeant wears their insignia, and because we have reason to believe someone from that team survived." He produced a sealed evidence bag containing scorched fabric, the same black and silver mark. "Official records say they were all killed," Harlow replied. "Without bodies, that's a guess. Are you implying a cover-up?" "I'm implying doubt, General." Rowan smiled thinly. "Doubt is dangerous in our line of work." The exchange hung between them, weighted and sharp. Then Rowan killed the display and stepped close. "If you learn anything about your mysterious mechanic, report to me first. Directly. No channels." Yes, sir. As Harlow left the room, his pulse drummed. Rowan was fishing, not for intel, but for control. And that meant Ward was a bigger threat than he'd imagined. He returned to his office to find a single envelope on his desk. No seal, no stamp, no fingerprints. Inside was a mechanical pencil note on aircraft maintenance paper. If you're reading this, they've already looked at you too. Check feed code 2C. Trust no one above Major. E. The same precise handwriting as before. Elias Ward was alive and still inside the base. By nightfall, the base would lock down, one airman would disappear, and Harlow would realize the only way to find the truth was to break every rule he swore to uphold. The Nevada desert fell into night silence, broken only by the hum of generators and the distant throb of aircraft engines cooling on the line. By 2100 hours, Elwood Air Base was locked down under Condition Bravo. Perimeter sealed, all personnel confined to quarters. The official reason, possible security breach in the weapons depot, was routine enough to calm the enlisted ranks. But for Colonel Marcus Harlow, it was confirmation that something far larger was already in motion. He sat alone in his office, light from a single desk lamp cutting across classified folders. The note from Elias Ward lay beside his wrist, its mechanical pencil letters faint but deliberate. Check feed code 2C. Trust no one above Major. He'd verified the code. It wasn't a maintenance tag. It was a buried reference to a forgotten weapons test protocol, one used only by covert strike divisions. The same divisions Rowan had once overseen. At 21:30, his comm panel blinked red. Colonel, this is Security Ops. Airman First Class Broderick Lane has failed to report. His ID badge last pinged the East Gate 20 minutes ago. No vehicle exit logged. Harlow's jaw tightened. Search his quarters. Notify me the moment you find anything. He ended the call and glanced toward the dark window. The base lights shimmered across the desert, sterile and cold. Lane had talked. Now he was gone. Whether silenced or extracted, it meant someone inside command was already cleaning up the trail. He retrieved his sidearm from the drawer, checked the chamber, and stepped into the corridor. Empty. The air smelled of hot metal and ozone. Somewhere a turbine wound down to silence. He didn't head for Security Ops. He went the other way, toward Hangar 3. The hangar loomed vast and dark, a cathedral of metal and shadows. Inside, the A-10 Thunderbolt rested under floodlights. Its cannons silent, panels open like exposed ribs. A figure stood on the service platform, half hidden behind the fuselage. Harlow's voice was steady. You picked a bad night to come back, Sergeant Ward. The man straightened slowly. Oil-stained coveralls, tool belt, sleeves rolled up to reveal the faint edges of a tattoo on his forearm, black and silver, shaped like a winged talon. His eyes were calm, assessing. Didn't come back, Ward said quietly. Never left. Harlow holstered the pistol but kept his distance. You've got about 30 seconds to explain why my base looks like a crime scene and why one of my airmen just vanished. Ward, say, climbed down from the scaffold with deliberate movements. Because you're not supposed to know what you almost died testing this morning. Start talking. That cannon was sabotaged, Ward said. Time to fail during live fire. Someone wanted the crash to look mechanical. Your death would have justified grounding the fleet. And me? I'd have been the scapegoat. Harlow folded his arms. General Rowan. Ward gave a humorless smile. Who else? He's been chasing a ghost for 5 years. Unfortunately, that ghost works in his hangar. Raven Team, Harlow said quietly. You were one of them. Ward's gaze flicked upward. Half surprise, half warning. You've been digging too deep, Colonel. They'll burn you for that. I've already been marked, Harlow replied. You left me a note. Why? Because you're not one of them. Ward motioned toward the A-10. You saw the patterns, the timing codes. You think like an investigator, not a politician. That means you might survive this. He reached into his coverall pocket and produced a small data chip sealed in resin. Everything I have, names, transfers, payments, enough to bring Rowan down if you can get it to the right people. Harlow stared at it. Why not deliver it yourself? Ward's jaw tightened. Because they erased me years ago. Officially KIA in Sevastopol. If that data comes from me, it disappears into a black file before morning. But if a sitting colonel brings it forward, different story. Before Harlow could answer, the hangar lights flared bright white. Floodlights. Armed guards flooded the entrance. A voice boomed through the PA. "Colonel Harlow, step away from the aircraft. Sergeant Ward, you are under arrest by order of General Rowan." Ward's expression didn't change. "Told you." They were already watching. Harlow whispered, "Stay calm. I'll handle this." "Too late for calm," Ward murmured. He tapped a panel near the cannon housing. A faint click sounded. The A-10's auxiliary power unit hummed alive. "Ward, what did you do?" "Set the stage," he said. "Every move Rowan makes tonight is being recorded from the flight cam feed. You wanted proof? You'll have it." Guards closed in, rifles raised. Harlow raised both hands. "Stand down. This man is under my command until further—" A gunshot cracked. Sparks exploded from a metal beam inches above Ward's head. The guards weren't taking prisoners. Ward dove behind the landing gear, shouting, "Run, Colonel! They don't want you alive either!" Harlow sprinted for the side exit. As alarms began to scream, the hangar lights cut out. Blackout protocol. Somewhere in the darkness, an engine coughed to life. He burst into the open air as the first explosion rattled the ground behind him. The night sky lit orange, and a single thought tore through his mind. They just turned the whole base into evidence. By dawn, Elwood Air Base would be in full lockdown, the hangar reduced to smoke, and Harlow would learn that the man he thought was a fugitive was the only ally he had left. By 04:30, the desert sky had shifted from black to the first pale wash of dawn. Smoke still curled from Hangar 3, turning the rising light a dull bronze. Fire crews moved in silence, their engines humming as they drowned the last embers of what had once been an A-10 and 1,000 classified secrets. Colonel Marcus Harlow stood just outside the cordon, his uniform streaked with soot, his face unreadable behind dark lenses. Every instinct in him screamed to start shouting, to demand answers, to confront. But years in intelligence had taught him restraint. Emotion was a tool, not a release. He watched the ruins cool and said nothing. The blast pattern told its own story. No fuel-air detonation. Controlled charges, internal, surgical, not chaotic. Someone had destroyed the evidence without damaging the surrounding structures. It was cleanup disguised as disaster. "Colonel," said a voice behind him. General Rowan approached, immaculate as ever, not a speck of ash on his pressed uniform. The man's calm under crisis had once inspired confidence. Now, it inspired suspicion. "A hell of a night," Rowan said mildly, surveying the wreckage. "Your mechanic seems to have vanished along with half the hangar's security feed." Harlow's tone was ice. "You mean Sergeant Ward, the one you ordered detained." "Former Sergeant Ward," Rowan corrected. "Officially deceased since 2018. Whoever he was, he's not one of ours." Harlow turned slowly to face him. "You had a whole team moving before the alarm sounded. Almost like you expected the explosion." Rowan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I expected something. You've been digging into classified systems, Colonel. I warned you once about curiosity, and I warned you once about corruption." A faint, dangerous pause hung between them. Rowan gestured toward the blackened remains. "This is what happens when ghosts of old missions come back to life. Unstable people do desperate things." "Ward wasn't unstable," Harlow said. He was silenced. The general's voice lowered, losing its practiced warmth. "Careful, Marcus. You're treading into territory that ends careers. Or worse. Then maybe it's time someone ended the right ones," Harlow said. Rowan's expression hardened. "You'll submit to debriefing at Oro 900. Your command access will be suspended until this investigation concludes." So that was it. House arrest in uniform. Harlow didn't argue. He simply nodded, eyes unreadable. "Understood, sir." By 0700, he was back in his quarters, every surface sterile, every light too bright. His access to secure terminals had already been revoked. The message was clear. The walls were closing in. But whoever built those walls had underestimated him. From a false compartment in his travel case, he retrieved a secondary drive, one he hadn't used since his days in the Pentagon's Black Intel division. Self-contained, off-grid, invisible to base systems. He powered it through a portable terminal and watched the interface bloom in the dark like a forbidden memory. Ward's chip was still in his pocket, sealed in resin. He slotted it into the drive. The screen filled with encrypted data. Images, mission manifests, bank transfers, personnel rosters. Dozens of familiar names scrolled past, tied to off-book shipments of military equipment routed through private contractors. Every document cross-referenced one name, Rowan. Then another name appeared, one Harlow hadn't expected. Major Adrian Cole, his second in command, the man who'd stood beside him every morning at roll call. The drive beeped twice. External ping detected. Someone was tracing his signal. He pulled the plug instantly, killing the feed. His heart hammered, not from fear but from calculation. Whoever triggered that trace wasn't base security, it was internal surveillance. They'd built tripwires around Ward's data, proof of how deeply Rowan's reach extended. He pocketed the chip, grabbed his jacket, and moved toward the service corridor that ran beneath the operations building. An old Cold War tunnel now used for utilities. If Rowan controlled the cameras, he'd have to move below them. The tunnels were silent except for the hum of power conduits. Halfway down, a faint click echoed. Someone following. He drew his sidearm, moved low, eyes adjusting to the dark. Then a whisper, "Easy, Colonel." From the shadows stepped Elias Ward, alive, covered in dust and grease, but breathing. "Jesus, Ward," Harlow muttered, lowering his weapon. "You were supposed to be vaporized." "Rowan doesn't know how to set a proper trap," Ward said with a thin smile. "The charges were directional. I walked out before the fire crews arrived." "You set the charges yourself," Ward nodded. "Had to erase the trail. The cannon, the logs, the tracker. Everything Rowan could twist against us." Harlow exhaled, the first real sign of relief he'd shown in hours. "You've just made yourself the most wanted man in the Air Force." "I've been that for 5 years. Ward handed him a second. "Drive. Smaller. Military issue. That one's clean. Copy of the real files plus one name you didn't see yet." Harlow frowned. "Whose?" Ward's voice dropped. "General Rowan's superior. The man who ordered the original cover-up. Code name, Spectre." The colonel froze. Ward met his gaze. "You're not fighting a man anymore, Colonel. You're fighting a machine that eats its own to stay invisible." Harlow pocketed the drive, his decision already made. "Then we starve it." Ward smiled faintly. "That's the spirit." But before either could move, the tunnel lights snapped to red. Base lockdown again, this time targeted, and somewhere above them Rowan's voice echoed through the intercom. "Colonel Harlow, you have exactly 10 minutes to surrender. Otherwise you'll be treated as hostile." Ward's grin turned grim. "Guess they noticed we skipped breakfast." Within the next 10 minutes, Marcus Harlow would have to choose. Turn himself in, or go dark with a man the world already believed was dead. Red light pulsed across the tunnel walls, turning concrete into a heartbeat. Colonel Marcus Harlow checked his watch. 9 minutes left. Above them, boots thundered through corridors, the metallic clatter of rifles echoing through the vents. Rowan's men were sweeping Sector 4, and Sector 4 meant them. Beside him, Elias Ward moved with the practiced calm of a man who'd lived too long in danger. "This exit feeds under the old weapons depot," Ward whispered. "If we make it there, we can cut through the storm drain and hit the perimeter fence before sunrise." "Assuming they haven't sealed it," Harlow said. Ward gave a quick grin. "They don't even know it exists. I helped build it, back when Spectre still paid us to clean up his messes." Harlow caught the name again. "Spectre. You keep using that like it's a code. Who is he?" Ward slowed just long enough to glance over his shoulder. "Rowan's handler. The architect of Operation Raven. Officially, he doesn't exist. Unofficially, he's the one who turned covert units into disposable currency." Harlow frowned. "CIA?" Ward shook his head. "No. Deeper. Internal Intelligence Division buried under procurement audits. A watchdog turned predator. They fund themselves now. Arms, data, influence. Rowan's just a mid-tier salesman." The colonel absorbed this while scanning the corridor ahead. "So Spectre ordered the Sevastopol strike." Ward nodded. "And wiped every trace of it after the team discovered his real operation. American weapons sold through foreign cutouts. We were supposed to die with the evidence. I didn't." Another tremor rumbled overhead. Doors slamming, distant shouting. Harlow tapped his comm unit. Static hissed. "They've jammed internal channels." "Good," Ward said. "Means they're scared." They reached a heavy maintenance door with an old mechanical lock. Ward produced a magnetic bypass key, patched wires like a magician. The lock clicked. Inside lay a forgotten service chamber. Pipes sweating condensation, the air metallic and stale. A dim safety bulb flickered overhead, painting everything the color of dried blood. Ward crossed to a rust-stained cabinet and yanked it open. Inside were two dusty crates stamped property of USAF. He cracked one lid. Inside, sealed packs of rations, a field radio, and a bundle of plastic-wrapped folders. "You've had a fallback cache here this whole time," Harlow said. Ward shrugged. "When you're officially dead, you start planning for it to stick." He pulled out a single manila folder and handed it over. "You'll want to see this." Harlow flipped through the pages, transaction logs, authorizations, signatures. One stood out in black ink. Brigadier General Lucian Spectre Rowan. He froze. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Spectre is Rowan?" Ward's expression darkened. "Not quite. Lucian Spectre Rowan was the original identity. When the Pentagon purged the covert divisions, he split himself. One man, two files. Rowan the officer stayed visible. Spectre the ghost handled everything off record." Harlow exhaled slowly. "He's been investigating himself for years. Every trail loops back to his own alias." Ward nodded. "Which means exposing him requires proof he can't bury, and someone he can't silence." "That's me," Harlow said quietly. A distant voice barked orders through the ventilation. "Contain Sector 4. Full lockdown. Do not let the colonel reach the perimeter." Ward smirked. "Looks like you're popular." They moved again, descending a narrow stairwell. Emergency lights strobed overhead. The temperature dropped. The damp chill of old infrastructure. Somewhere behind them, a metallic clang echoed. "They're sealing the tunnels," Harlow muttered. "Then we speed up." They ran, boots splashing through shallow water, the tunnel curving east. Ward led the way, breathing steady despite the strain. For a man presumed dead 5 years, he moved like time owed him interest. At the next junction, Ward halted suddenly, hand raised. Ahead, flashlight beams cut through dust. 3 soldiers sweeping the lower vent. "Non-lethal?" Harlow whispered. Ward's eyes glinted. "Depends on them." They waited until the guards passed the cross corridor, then Ward tossed a small canister. It hissed, releasing a dense gray smoke. Confusion followed. Shouts, coughing, silhouettes twisting in the haze. 2 seconds later, Ward pulled Harlow through a side shaft, sealing the grate behind them. The muffled chaos faded as they crawled through narrow, ducting metal groaning beneath their weight. Finally, daylight bled through a maintenance hatch ahead. Ward pushed it open. The desert horizon streaked in violet dawn. They were outside the perimeter fence, unseen. Harlow leaned against the concrete lip, catching his breath. "Where now?" Ward pointed east. "Abandoned relay tower 5 miles out, still powered. From there we can transmit the full data package off-grid. Rowan will anticipate that." "Rowan's anticipating a man running scared," Ward said, tightening his pack. "We're not running. We're going hunting." Harlow followed his gaze to the rising sun. The desert looked almost peaceful, indifferent to the corruption boiling beneath its soil. He checked the drive in his pocket. Proof against a ghost. By nightfall, Harlow and Ward would discover the truth about Spectre, and that the only way to expose him might be from inside his own command structure. The relay tower stood like a skeleton against the pale desert dawn, rusted steel bones rising from the dunes, half forgotten since the Cold War. Its warning lights were long dead, but deep inside, the power still hummed, faint, steady, alive. Colonel Marcus Harlow and Elias Ward approached low, keeping to the rocks. From a distance, it looked deserted. From experience, Harlow knew nothing that useful ever was. Ward crouched by the service hatch and scanned the padlock. Mechanical. Perfect. A twist, a click, and the door yielded. Inside, dust hung thick as fog. Rows of old communication panels blinked with residual life. Ward swept a flashlight across the console, found the ancient uplink port, and smiled. Still running on analog redundancy. They never shut these ghosts off. Harlow handed him the encrypted drive. "If this gets through, the Pentagon has undeniable proof." Ward connected the drive, fingers dancing across the keyboard like muscle memory from a life he wasn't supposed to have. Lines of code rolled across the cracked monitor. A soft beep signaled handshake established. Then, the screen flickered. Connection intercepted. Ward's expression hardened. He's tracing us. Harlow drew his sidearm, scanning the entryway. Rowan? Who else? Ward replied, voice flat. Spectre's shadow still runs half the comm satellites. The second we hit transmit, he piggybacked the signal. Static burst through the tower's old speaker system. Then a voice, calm, unhurried. Good morning, gentlemen. You didn't think I'd lose track of my favorite ghosts, did you? Rowan's voice, cool and precise. Ward muttered, he's using the relay frequency itself, broadcasting into the open band. Colonel Harlow, Rowan continued, I assume you've seen the file by now. I warned you once. Some truths aren't meant to be handled by men with conscience. Harlow stepped to the mic. You murdered your own team. You sold American weapons to our enemies, then burned everyone who could expose it. Rowan chuckled softly. Morality is a luxury reserved for survivors. You're not one. A tone pinged through the console. A lock. Ward's eyes widened. He's remote triggering the tower. Thermal overload. They dove for the hatch as the first spark flared. Metal screamed. The relay tower erupted in a rolling pulse of white-orange light. Not an explosion, but a microwave surge that fried everything electronic within 50 meters. They hit the sand hard outside, the air thick with ozone. Behind them, the tower glowed like molten glass, silent now except for the hiss of burning circuitry. Ward groaned, pulling himself up. That was his kill switch. Every relay tied to that frequency's cooked. Then we need another line out, Harlow said. Ward glanced east, where the faint glint of a convoy shimmered across the horizon. Rowan's men. They'll reach us in 10. Harlow shielded his eyes. Black SUVs kicking up dust, too organized for base security. Extraction team? Ward shook his head. Termination team. They ran, cutting toward a dry ravine lined with rock outcroppings. The sun climbed higher, painting the desert in harsh gold. Each step burned through adrenaline and grit. Ward slowed long enough to toss the ruined transmitter into the sand. He can't trace what doesn't exist. You just lost the only copy of the evidence, Harlow said. Ward tapped his chest pocket. Did I? He pulled a thin metallic drive no larger than a dog tag. This is the ghost version. Low-band frequency, analog modulation. Spectre's system can't detect it. Harlow stared. You planned for the relay to fail. Ward smiled faintly. I've been planning for Rowan since the day he killed my team. A distant drone whirred overhead. Harlow ducked under the ridge, watching a black reconnaissance unit sweep the sand. Eyes in the sky, he muttered. Ward exhaled. We're running out of Earth to hide under. Then the faint buzz of an incoming signal came from Ward's wrist comm, one that shouldn't exist. He checked it, a coded string scrolling across the screen. Safe House Delta, 00900 Zulu. He looked up at Harlow. That's not mine. Harlow frowned. Whose then? Someone with access to internal mission codes, Ward said. Maybe an ally, or a lure. They exchanged a look. Either way, it was their only lead. 2 hours later, the desert heat shimmered like glass when they reached the safe house. A derelict radar bunker buried in sand. The steel hatch opened before they touched it. Inside stood a woman in fatigues, mid-40s, sharp-eyed. The insignia on her chest read Inspector General's Office. Colonel Harlow, Sergeant Ward. Her tone was crisp. My name is Captain Elias Westfield. You've made quite a mess. Harlow studied her. You with the Pentagon? Technically. But let's say I'm with what's left of the Oversight Division Spectre couldn't corrupt. Ward's hand hovered near his holster. You expect us to believe that? Westfield tossed a small projector on the table, flickered to life, showing the emblem of Operation Swift Talon and Rowan's digital signature beneath false reports. You're not the only ones collecting evidence, she said. But to finish this, we need your drive. Harlow hesitated. If we hand this over, how do we know it doesn't vanish into another black file? Westfield met his gaze evenly. Because I'm tired of watching ghosts do the government's dirty work. Spectre ends tonight, one way or another. The bunker lights flickered. Distant rumble outside. Drones inbound again. Ward slipped the drive into her hand. Then I hope you have a plan, Captain. Westfield's lips curved faintly. Oh, I do. But you might not like it. By nightfall, Harlow would realize that Captain Westfield's plan meant walking straight into Spectre's command hub, and that Rowan was waiting for them on the inside. The convoy cut through the desert like a scar of black steel. Inside the lead vehicle, Colonel Marcus Harlow sat between Elias Ward and Captain Elise Westfield, the desert wind rattling the frame. Ahead, under the dying light, the Spectre operations hub rose from the sand, a concrete bunker built to look like a geological anomaly. No markings, no signals, no record, just shadows and secrets. Ward checked the rifle on his lap. "You sure this isn't a suicide run?" Westfield didn't blink. "Every one of us here died on paper years ago. That makes us ghosts. Ghosts don't fear tombs." Harlow stared through the windshield, silent. The horizon burned orange, the air heavy with static. "Rowan's expecting us. He won't run." "Good," Ward said. "I've been running long enough." At 1900 hours, they reached the perimeter gate, abandoned, the wind stirring sand through barbed wire. The hum of a buried generator vibrated underfoot. Westfield raised a handheld transmitter and entered a code. The gate split open with a slow metallic groan. They stepped inside. The corridors were sterile, silent, no guards, just the faint echo of air systems running on automatic. Harlow's instinct prickled. "Too quiet," Westfield motioned ahead. "Command center's down that hall." Ward took point, weapon steady. They moved through flickering lights until they reached a reinforced door. The keypad was already active. Someone had unlocked it. The door hissed open. Inside, General Rowan stood alone before a wall of monitors, his uniform crisp, his posture immaculate. He looked like a man hosting a press briefing, not a traitor cornered in his den. "Marcus," he said softly, "you always did have a talent for dramatics." Harlow raised his pistol. "End of the line, Rowan. Drop it." Rowan smiled faintly. "Do you even know who you're pointing that at?" "I built everything you've stood on. The missions, the data, the silence that kept this country safe." Ward's voice was low, trembling with quiet anger. "You built graves. You sold lives." Rowan turned toward him. "Ah, Sergeant Ward. I see resurrection hasn't softened you." Ward stepped closer. "You killed my team. I buried liabilities," Rowan said coldly. "And you were very expensive liabilities." Westfield spoke sharply. "Lucian Rowan, alias Spectre. We have your authorizations, your offshore transfers, your operations under proxy contracts. It's over." Rowan turned to her, eyes narrowing. "You think the Pentagon will thank you? They built me. You'll hand them this evidence and they'll bury it deeper than I ever could." "Maybe," Harlow said, "but at least we'll drag it into daylight first." Rowan looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. "You were always the naive one. You believe in honor like it's armor. But honor doesn't keep nations alive. Men like me do." Ward's finger tightened on his rifle. "Then it's time men like you stopped breathing." Harlow's voice cut through, calm but commanding. "No, he faces trial, not execution." Rowan's smirk returned. "You still think there's justice left in this system? Look around, Colonel. I am the system." He reached toward the console, fast. But Ward was faster. A single shot cracked, echoing through the chamber. Rowan froze, staring at the spreading crimson on his sleeve. Not fatal. Deliberate. Ward lowered his rifle. "That's for Sevastopol. The rest is up to the law you never believed in." Westfield stepped forward, activating her comm. "This is Captain Westfield, Internal Division, transmitting live evidence from Spectre Command, confirming detainment of General Lucien Rowan." The monitors behind him blinked one by one, connecting to off-site feeds. For the first time, Rowan's empire broadcast itself to the world. His composure cracked. "You don't understand. If those files go public, alliances collapse, markets crash. Then maybe," Harlow said quietly, "we all start rebuilding on truth instead of ghosts." Rowan sank into the chair, blood seeping through his hand, eyes hollow. For the first time, he looked like what he truly was. Not a mastermind, just a man who mistook fear for control. By dawn, the bunker was sealed. Military police filled the desert, satellite trucks flanked the perimeter, and headlines around the world flashed. "Spectre unmasked. Deep State General exposed in covert operation." Harlow stood on the ridge as the first light rose, wind tugging at his jacket. Ward joined him, a quiet silhouette against the sun. You could have killed him, Harlow said. Ward shrugged. Would have been too easy. They watched the convoy carry Rowan away. Sirens fading into the desert wind. Westfield approached, removing her headset. Washington's already calling this a breach of command integrity. They'll bury parts of it, twist others, but the truth's out there now. Harlow nodded. That's enough. Ward chuckled softly. You're still the idealist. Harlow looked toward the horizon, his tone calm, almost reflective. No, just tired of pretending silence means strength. Westfield gave a faint smile. So what now, Colonel? He adjusted his collar, the dawn light glinting off the silver insignia on his chest. We rebuild. One truth at a time. Ward extended a hand. Rough, scarred, steady. Harlow clasped it without hesitation. In the end, the fall of General Rowan wasn't just the exposure of corruption. It was a reminder that loyalty built on fear collapses and silence mistaken for strength eventually shatters. Marcus Harlow never spoke publicly about the operation. He returned to quiet service, training recruits on what leadership truly means. Not control, but conscience. And somewhere in the Nevada desert, wind still moves through an empty bunker, whispering the names of those who chose truth over shadows. Because real power isn't in secrets. It's in the courage to end them. When were you underestimated or told your integrity was weakness? Maybe that moment was your strength all along. If you found this story moving, share it. Because every silent act of courage deserves to be heard. And this was the War Chair.